All right, guys. So in the interest of good reporting, I want to make sure that we definitely dive into the frustrations and discuss what has been happening recently with Bethesda and the response to the Shattered Space DLC. I think it's very important to get into that, but to make sure that we're not just being haters and just rage baiting everything, it's very important to me that we end this with some positives in terms of what can Bethesda do better and what does improvement look like in this scenario. Instead of just talking about everything they're doing wrong, I want to talk about what it looks like to do things right from the eyes of the community and hopefully provide some hope and perspective here for the community and Bethesda, because I don't think we need to just be so focused on putting them down and making them feel bad about what's been going on. I think it's more progressive to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire on some of these issues while also providing avenues for how this can improve, because it doesn't make any sense to just hate on something if you don't have a solution yourself. I'm a big believer of that. So I want to make sure that at the end of this video, we hone in on what can be done better and what it looks like to move forward in a positive manner. Now, that is not to be on this train of toxic positivity. It's just a more progressive way of moving forward than just hating, and then crossing our fingers and hoping that they do something better. I want to have a discussion here. I think it's important for the community to be a part of that discussion. I think it's important for Bethesda to be a part of that discussion, and that's part of what you're going to see in the tail end of this video here. But first, let's get into what exactly has been happening. Shattered Space has come out. I've played it. I'm sure many of you have played it. I enjoyed it enough. It was good, but it was short and it was not at all what anyone expected, which is why I think it is getting the response that it's getting right now. And I think it's completely deserved. This was teed up to be some massive expansion. It was going to take a year. It did take a year. There was this expectation that a lot of content was being pumped into this expansion, and the result that we got was not a bunch of content. In my experience, it did not take me very long to get through it. I know it's not taking many people very long to get through it. You can really get through it in about an afternoon, maybe a little bit more than that, which is not at all what was expected from something that's been worked on for a year. Now, by no means did I think anybody was expecting all the way up to like a CD Projekt Red response for this. I think we all understand that that can be an outlier case in what CD Projekt Red was able to do with Phantom Liberty and really change people's opinions on the game and really turn it around. I think that's the upper end of the spectrum, which is fine, and I think it's what you should shoot for, but I think everyone's realistic expectations were that we're shooting way up there, and hopefully we're going to land pretty close to it. That's not what happened at all. I don't even know if they shot for it in the first place, and that's what's extremely frustrating about this, is it just does not feel like the same level of care was put into this as something like Phantom Liberty or really any other expansions that we've seen in a lot of games, even Bethesda's own expansions that they've done in previous games. This was touted to be something that was going to be like Far Harbor or equivalent, and I don't even think it reaches 10% of that, which is extremely frustrating for sure. But putting that aside, because this is not a review of the expansion itself, this is more to talk about the news surrounding what is happening right now, what exactly is going on with Bethesda and how it can improve. Let's get into what one of the game's lead designers, Emil has said, and what exactly is going on with the community, which is what I want to focus in on around this game. First, I know that a lot of people have heard about what Emil has said and his string of tweets and what he seems to regularly do in regards to tweets. I don't want to start there. We're going to get to that. We're going to discuss it, but I want to start a little different here on the expansion itself and what Emil had to say about that, because I think it's important to hold them accountable for what they've been saying about the expansion while also having the context of what they're currently saying. So let's jump over here to, we're going to start out with an article from Games Radar written by Heather Wald. So let's jump in here. The title of it is Players Explore Like They Used to in Fallout and Skyrim, How Shattered Space Brings the Bespoke Goodness of Past Bethesda RPGs to Starfield. This was written on September 30th. I like the opening here. Again, if you have not seen some of these reviews you do and the reporting that I try to do, I will go through these articles. I try to highlight things that I think are good or positive, something that we want to focus on in green. Here in red, these are red flags concerning things that I want to talk about. And then these regular yellow highlights are just things that are worth talking about or just a point in the article that I don't want to miss. So that's how the color coding goes through here. So if there's any studio that knows how to make memorable DLC, it's Bethesda. I completely agree. I think Bethesda, a lot of times when they've made DLC in the past, if you look at their repertoire, of DLCs that they've done in the past, they definitely are able to hit the nail on the head really, really well. They tell great stories, they put great environments, they build great characters, and they really know how to create an expansion that has a lot of quality content that is not only a large amount of content, but is also worth putting a large amount of time into. Coming down here, it talks about how Emil says that we knew very early on we needed to add an explorable landmass with lots of handcrafted content. I'm really glad to hear that. That's really great because it sounds like they are hearing some of these things that are concerns in regards to what's been happening with Starfield. So this quote makes it seem like they are listening. They do see some of this feedback. They understand what people are wanting. And that's why, as we get further along, it makes it a little bit more confusing, because if you're hearing stuff like this, why are you not hearing the rest of what people are saying? But this is a positive. This is really good. And I just want them to hear more of things like this, because people do want that. They want an explorable landmass with lots of handcrafted content. That's a good sign. But let's keep going here. As we see, it gets a little disconnected here. So the goal, says Pagliarulo, is for players to feel like they're stumbling upon surprises left by Starfield's developers, whether that's a specific story, random encounters, or unique items. We get a little lost in the weeds here, and I get a little bit confused personally because, again, it sounds like you're hearing what people want. So much so to the point you're repeating it directly as if from some of the reviews that are posted. But when I get into the core content of the game, that heart that you're saying you want to put into it is not there in the game. You're saying that you hear that people want handcrafted content, but you're only putting one or two pieces of it in here. In this quote specifically, he says, whether it's a specific story, random encounter, or unique item. And Shattered Space makes me feel like they almost went in and just made sure to tick all those boxes. Did we add a specific story? Yes, we did. Okay, great. How about a random encounter? Is there a random encounter in there? Yes, check. And a unique item. We have a unique item? Check. All right, cool. Hands off. We're done. That's kind of what it feels like happened with Shattered Space. And that's what is so confusing, because that's great and you're getting pieces of what's being said here, but you're not delivering the whole package. It's almost like the culture has shifted into just making sure we check all the boxes to get some money and then moving on to the next thing. And that's not what people are looking for. You might be making the money and people might be picking it up with hopes of that happening, but you are continuing to fail to deliver on what people are actually asking for here. That's really difficult. And that's why I just did a little highlight right here. It says, this is a DLC dedicated to bespoke goodness. I think that was the intention behind it, for sure, and that's great, but I don't feel like that's what was actionably done about this DLC, and that's what's so frustrating. Continue a little bit further in the article. I got another red flag down here. He says, once they decided to actually build the world for the expansion, they started testing the limitations of what they could do. Could they, for example, make some kind of eternal eclipse or pools of mercury in the creation tools? And again, this is where it feels like we're getting lost in the weeds here. You're not talking about what should we do. You're talking about what can we do. And I think that's the wrong discussion to have here. That's really cool that you want to see if you can put some kind of eternal eclipse in there or some kind of creation tool. And I think this is where Emil is leaning into when he talks about this is one of the hardest things we've worked on or one of the most technical games that we've ever made. That's great, but it's in the wrong realm. That is like filler, end of development content that you're discussing. And you guys are talking about this at the forefront of building this DLC, and I think that's wrong. I think something like an Eternal Eclipse should be an afterthought. Let's focus on the questing. Let's focus on how the gameplay loops feel. I'm not that worried about an Eternal Eclipse if these other core factors are not done correctly. I really appreciate them, and I get where the passion is coming from, and I think it's really, really great. I love a developer that has a lot of passion behind it. But I think you really, really need to focus on getting your core foundation set before you start playing with all of these fun little things. Because I can tell you what is not going to make people stick around in your game from the jump is an Eternal Eclipse or pools of mercury when they look up into the skybox. I think that will hold on to somebody that's been playing the game for hours and hours and then decides to look up and notices something really cool that the developer decided to put into. But that is not going to keep somebody in the seat playing your game from the get-go. That is just a fun add-on passion project and not what the game or the development should be focused on. Finally, down here at the end, I just wanted to discuss the theme that he seems to think that they tried to impose on this. He said, but with its Lovecraftian leanings among distant stars, there's nothing in Bethesda's wheelhouse quite like Shattered Space, and that's where cosmic horror lies in wait. I get that this is what people probably sat down and said they wanted to make it, but I did not personally get these vibes at all from Shattered Space. And the few times that I started to feel those vibes, especially like the cosmic horror, it was short-lived. It was very short-lived. It was maybe a piece of a quest, or maybe it was one whole quest, but that's it. It was one quest. It was not this string that was held throughout the entire story of the quest. It was not this core mechanic that was held through the entirety of the DLC experience. Some of these things like the Lovecraftian leanings and stuff like that, I just don't see it. To me personally, it seems like we built a new world, slapped a filter on it, and just called it good enough. We called it a new area and things like that. I do not get any kind of vibes of this being any different than the rest of the Starfield experience, other than reskinning some of the clothes, putting a purple filter on everything, and then just trying to piece together a few quests and a few encounters to call this DLC good enough to put out. That's what this felt like. And that makes me really sad as a fan of Bethesda. That's very frustrating. To get further into this, there's another article here from IGN, and this is where we start to get into what Emil specifically said in his long string of tweets that he put out trying to defend the position of Shattered Space. This is an article that's titled Bethesda Design Director Addresses Fan Concern as Starfield DLC Shattered Space Plunges to Mostly Negative Steam Review Rating. So we all know that the reviews have not been excellent for this. We all know that people are frustrated with it. It's too short. All that stuff. This is Emil responding to that kind of criticism and what people have been saying, and I just don't think his response landed very well, as most people have already seen. So my optimism is in no way meant to be mud in the eye of any dissatisfied fan. That's not how it works. I understand you can say that, but still do that, and that's what you're doing here. You're saying that I'm not meaning to throw mud in people's eyes, but you are. You're throwing mud in people's eyes. People are very frustrated about not only what happened, but what you're saying about it as well. I'm also very proud of Shattered Space. We all are. I'm not saying you shouldn't be proud of your work. I want to be very clear about that. You can do a lot of hard work and be really proud of it and it not turn out to be excellent or noteworthy or whatever you want to call it. You can still be really proud of something that you worked really hard on. I have no problem with that, but you need to be open to feedback and hearing what people have to say about the thing that you put so much time into that did not land. You should not get rid of your pride for that thing. You should have so much pride in this that you want to hear what people's criticisms are of it, so that way you can maintain your pride by continuing to refine it and make it better. And I think that's what we're missing here. I feel like we're just sitting here talking about how proud we are of what we made, and we're just closing our ears to what people have to say about this thing. It's as if we can never reopen that door and fix or change what has already been done. But it's a video game. We can update things. We can change things. We can do things differently to hopefully refine what we've already done. And we get further into this as Pagliarulo goes on to say, I'm also very proud of Shattered Space. We all are. He talks about the quest writers in this. He says most of the quests and levels in the expansion were developed by designers who worked on previous Bethesda games and DLC, going all the way back to 2002 masterpiece Morrowind. They're good at what they do, and I believe that. There's some great quest writers there, and these developers are not dumb. The people that work at Bethesda are good at what they do. They are. I believe that. It's the second half of the sentence that's a problem, and it shows. It doesn't show. You have such talent within your company. I know you do. We've seen it time and time again. There's so much talent within this company, and it's not showing through anymore. It is not coming through. You might feel like it is on your end because you see these people day in and day out. You see what they're capable of. You see what they do. You talk to them and have discussions with them and hear all of these capabilities and what they're able to build. But it is not coming through the filter that is your games. It is not making its way to the community. And I think you need to reconnect with what it means to bring all of that talent through the game and out here into the masses so that we can enjoy it as well. He goes on to say, if folks have played Shattered Space and still don't like it, that makes me very sad. And I'm glad you're worried about how people feel about playing it. Just know that we've also been hearing from plenty of people who love it. This is such a big point for me. I cannot emphasize enough how much of a problem I think this is. Just know that we have been also hearing from plenty of people who love it. I continue to see this repeated in not just Emil's discussion of Starfield or really any of their games. But I continue to see this pushed out by all Bethesda leadership. Todd, Emil, anybody from the development side that is talking to the press or talking to anyone outside the studio about their games and stuff like that, they always say some version of this line that is just know that we have been hearing from people that also love it. That is not the line to stand on. That is not the business that you think you're standing on here. What you're telling me is that in a group of 100 people, if 90 of them are saying that something is not fun and needs to be changed and we don't like it and we're not going to buy it, but 10 of them are saying that they enjoy it and they like it, you're just going to point to the 10 people and be like, see, we're good. We're good. We did it. That's plenty of people right there. This is plenty of people. We got plenty of people that enjoy it, plenty of people that like it. No worries. We're all good here. We have our little group of people over here, but there's 90 people over here who are saying, you could do better. You can change. Please do better and please change, and we'll all get on board with you. You're listening to the minority instead of the majority. And I don't think that's good, because I think you have a circumstance where you can be inclusive of both. You can hold on to the things that the people who already like the game are enjoying while continuing to add things in content that bring in the rest of those people. And you're choosing not to do that. I think that is such a strange thing to stand on here, and I think it comes from corporate pressure and culture. That is the kind of line that you say to somebody who is looking in from the outside as a boss or a manager or a corporate overlord that is trying to get feedback on your recent work. And you look up and you tell them, don't worry, there is a group of people that is enjoying this and our time is not being wasted. That's the kind of line you report to a manager up above, to make it seem like your work that you have been doing has not been wasted and you're not doing a bad job. And I think that's the wrong approach to take here. I don't think that that means as much as you think it does when you say it to the fans. Moving on, he says, fans want a lot. We do all we can to accommodate them. Red flag. Here's what I can tell you. Nobody, and I mean nobody at Bethesda, is patting themselves on the back while ignoring the players. I think this line has been repeated again and again. I think everybody has talked about this quite a bit. You're patting yourselves on the back. You are sitting here in this article, in this interview, patting yourself on the back. In your tweets, you're patting yourself on the back while thinking that if you just add this tagline at the end of like, oh no, don't worry, we're listening to criticisms and feedback. That's not how it works. You need to actually show evidence of change, an actionable change. And when you say a line like we do all we can to accommodate them, discussing the fans that want a lot, I don't believe you here. And I don't believe you based on evidence. This is not me hating. This is being real. There is a laundry list of things that gamers have asked for in regards to just this game alone. And I would say less than 10% of those things have not only not been included, but not even been addressed. They haven't even been addressed by Bethesda. And that is frustrating. That's not accommodating. That's not listening to people. That is just putting your head down, putting the blinders on, and ignoring what people have to say and thinking that your way is the best way. And you keep pointing to evidence like, look, people buy the game, so it doesn't matter. It does matter. It really matters, because you're losing credibility with the fan base. People are continuing to buy the games because they're hopeful, but you're losing more and more people every time that hope gets chipped away at. And right down here, it's more of the same. Listening to our fans every step of the way. I don't really think that you are, based on what I just said. We move as fast as we can, as safely as we can. I'm glad for the speed and the desire to be swift. As safely as we can seems like such a cop-out to me. I appreciate that you do not want to break things as you start to move along within your game. But this is a video game at the end of the day. There is no safety net here. There's backups. Everything is okay. If you try and innovate on new things and it breaks your entire game, please revert to your last save file and start from square one. Don't do something that's going to break not only your whole game, but your entire IT department and shut down your studio. That's not what we're talking about here. Just innovate gradually and iteratively and just make little changes here. I think that is such a ridiculous cop-out to say as safely as we can. There's nothing dangerous about trying to add new things to your game, okay? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Go back to square one. If it does, great. Add it and move on. It says right here, game development is always tricky, but with a game as big as Starfield, every fix could potentially break something else. Okay, Look, this tells me that you are not hearing specifically what people are saying. You are not seeing the forest for the trees here. You are getting so focused in on Starfield as a game, and maybe you're going to break it if you add something, but Shattered Space is a perfect example of why that should not be a concern. Nothing in Shattered Space was already in the game. This was an entirely new expansion to be added on that did not have to weave or intertwine with anything within the main game. While it can, that's great, but it doesn't have to, which means there's nothing to break. This is an add-on that should not break the rest of the game. Again, this is just not the comment that you think it is. You're not going to break the whole game, and we don't even want you to work on the whole game. If you had just focused in on Shattered Space as its own piece of content, really focus on reducing the scope, I think that you would have a much better experience with your development, and we would in turn have a better experience as gamers with the final result. Because when you guys niche down and focus in and hone in on something, it's really, really well done. And if you would just do a handful of things like that instead of trying to do lots of different things, I think that would net a better result. Finally, a little green flag here. He says, I've been playing their games since the Terminator days. All I or anyone here wants to do is make those games and then make them better. And that's great. I'm not going to take that away from him or anyone that works at Bethesda. I don't doubt that they just want to do better. But I just think you need to open your ears and listen a little bit more to what the fans are talking about. It really, really means a lot to a lot of people outside of the studio as well. So I think it's important that you get plugged in with those people and hear what they have to say. Right here at the end, no ego, no arrogance, just a lot of hard work and appreciation of our fans. If you mean that, if you truly mean that, it should not be a problem for you to dive into the community, hear what they have to say, get super plugged in with them, and somehow find ways to iterate that into your development process and into the game itself. But like I said at the beginning of this video, it is really important to me that we don't just hate and be super negative about everything that's going on here. I think it's really important to be a positive voice in moving forward. So that brings me to the final part of this video where I want to focus on what can Bethesda do. And I have made another little slideshow here. So keep the development team plugged into what people are thinking about the game, about the future, about what they like or don't like. It's its own form of QA by being plugged into your community and having your finger on the pulse, as some people like to say. If you don't know what the community is thinking or feeling, you're just operating in the blind and hoping that things are going to work out. And I don't think that is a good way to move forward. So I think it makes a lot of sense to try and get as much engagement there as you can without obviously disrupting the development cycle. So whether that looks like weekly, monthly, or quarterly meetings, as long as these community management people are being allowed in the discussion of development, I think that's a positive move, and it avoids things like what we're seeing here with Emil going out, saying all of these crazy things, and then there being no other unifying voice from Bethesda about what they actually think or the directions they're going in. And that brings me to this last point here, regular community updates. There are no regular community updates from Bethesda. They'll drop things every once in a while when content is about to drop, but outside of that, there is not a weekly video. There's not many devlogs unless a game is coming out. There's not even really an operating blog that has regular, consistent weekly updates. I mean, that's why I put this very last point right here. At least post something for people to latch onto. You need to have a line of communication between your consumers and the people making the content that will be consumed. If you don't have that, again, you're just operating in the dark. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's some of the positive things that I think could be done at Bethesda. I think if they just had better community management, they had a better line to their community and had a real advocate within the studio that was speaking for the community, but then could also speak to the community about what's happening on the development side, that liaison would be such a key point for Bethesda at this point, that I think it would make all the difference moving forward. If even just for having a discussion with the community about what the developer is thinking and where they're coming from. Having a consistent voice that is really good at talking to the community, explaining what's happening within the studio, would really, really help in a lot of different ways. So that's really it. I don't want to make this too long. I want to know what you guys think about what's been going on with Bethesda, and I would love to hear from you guys about what some more positive things could be done moving forward to move the needle in the right direction for Bethesda. as a huge fan of what they do and the kind of games they usually build, it's hard for me to see them go through something like this. And so I really, really want them to turn this ship around and right it. I really am hopeful. I think a lot of people in the community are hopeful. It's why we keep buying these games, but maybe not. Maybe you're done. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoy gaming updates and news like this, please hit subscribe, like, all that. Get down in the comments. Let's have a discussion. I'm really excited to hear from you guys. I appreciate you checking this video out. If you want to see some more info like this, I've got a couple of videos that I'll put up here. We love to talk games here. We love to talk recent gaming news, and we're all over the place with content, so I'm sure you can find something for yourself. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.